writing.
I never fucked anybody over in my life. Didn't have it coming to me. You got that? All I have in this world is my balls and my word. And I don't break them for no one. You understand?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I work for Kaiser Soze.
Tu me déçois énormément.
I work for Kaiser Soze.
Je suis colère, les enfants, je suis colère.
Hey there, gang. Welcome to Admit 1, your movie ticket. Today I'm going to do a little recap of one of my favorite things to do, and that is the Phoenix Film Festival. So back in 2012, I joined this other website and was writing for them. And we eventually got press access and things like that. And come April, they'd asked me if I wanted to do the Phoenix Film Festival. And I said, sure, I'll check it out, whatever. And I did it. And it was one of the funnest things I've ever done. And while I eventually left, losing the press access was kind of bummer. I didn't get to go see movies early or things like that. But one of the things I was really bummed about was not being able to go to the Phoenix Film Festival. And now that at this moment in time, I was writing for Constantly Calibrating. And I said, hey, let's try to get access to this. And it worked out, and I've gone every year since. This is like my 5th year going. And I think this year was the year that I've seen like the most movies. I had pretty packed day every day almost. Friday night, I went and saw The Transfiguration, which is, they bill it as a vampire movie, but it's really not. It's about this kid who is dealing with the loss of his mom and dealing with really thoughts of suicide is what it all boils down to. And he uses vampirism as a metaphor for that. And he meets this girl, and they're talking about vampirism, and he's looking for a way out of this world, but he thinks he's a vampire, so he concocts this way to pretty much commit suicide without committing suicide because he can't live in this world anymore. And I didn't know that going in. I thought it was a straight up indie vampire movie. So that was kind of a big, I guess, twist for me. So if you have a chance to see that, I highly recommend it. And one of the favorite things about Phoenix Film Festival is actually the short films. One of my favorite movies ever was one of the short films from a couple years ago. It was about this deaf girl, and she was dating a deaf guy, but she wanted to basically hear. And they'd figured out a medical procedure for her to be able to do that with her type of deafness. And her boyfriend saw it as kind of a betrayal. And it was only like 10, 12 minutes, but it's like one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. Anywho, so this year we have the Live Shorts A, which was the first thing I saw on Saturday. And there's usually 5 to 9 short movies in here. The first one in this segment was Shy Guys, where these two dudes are in a public restroom and both of them are having trouble peeing. They're like public pee afraid, whatever. And they kind of bond over that, and it was pretty funny. And the movies, or these short films, range in quality, but I try to not knock them too much because they're out there doing what most of us who like to talk the talk are. They're actually doing it. You know, they've made something, whether it's enjoyable or not. They've actually poured time and effort into this, so I can't fault them too hard for things like that. But the next one up was A Beautiful Day, which actually stars James Brolin. He's an elderly gentleman, and it's basically following him on his day, and you could tell that there's something up because he's changing his diabetic diet, and he's like acting like it's his last day. And what he does is enact probably a fantasy of most of ours. His daughter is in an abusive relationship, and he basically shows up at their house and shoots the guy, and that's it. So it's kind of interesting on that one. Swim is about I'm sorry if I don't know the term, but transgendered fellow who is having trouble grappling with his identity and coming to terms with telling his parents, and his mom knows something is up, and she thinks she knows what it is. But it's kind of cool, this, forgive the pun, but transition at the end where he jumps into the pool, but she emerges as an adult. So that's kind of cool. The Retriever it's basically a snippet of a movie about, you always see these bit characters in mob movies, how they're just doing random tasks, and that's basically what this is. It's just following him on just a random task, and just like almost like a little snippet of a deleted scene of a movie. It's pretty interesting. Mine, M-I-N-E, is about what would happen if you stepped on a landmine. What would you do? Personally, I think I would try to run and see if I could make it, which probably wouldn't happen. Don't think I would get 2 inches from the plate before it blew me to smithereens. But this guy tries everything in his power to get off of that mine once he steps on it, including killing his prized goat. We don't really have that problem here in America, but this is a huge problem elsewhere in the world, of these old mines and weapons and ordnances, things like that left over from wars. So it's kind of interesting to see that perspective of it. Miriam's Balloons is about it's almost like afterwards, some of the cool things about this festival is a lot of times they have Q&As afterwards with the filmmakers. And this one, the filmmaker said he wanted to basically craft a visual poem. And it does that. There's not a whole lot of dialogue in this, but you know exactly what's going on. This little girl is collecting balloons for her sick friend, and you pick up right away that the balloons are basically people's life force. So, but the universe course corrects itself on that one. It's pretty interesting. And the last one in Life Shorts A was The Babysitter Murders, which is part of, I guess, an anthology, almost like a VHS or something like that. Basically about what you might think a typical horror slasher movie would be about, a killer coming to kill the babysitter, only there's a little twist at the end. I don't want to give it away, even though you could probably pick it up, about halfway through. But there's some cool practical effects in this, including a TV falling on someone's face. But I guess I was doing some research, and the filmmakers are looking to get funding to complete the rest of it, so I really hope they do that. The next up was The Dutchman. I love whenever there's a scene in a movie where I have ties to, basically, so like Phoenix, Arizona in Psycho, or the scene in Nightcrawler where Jake Gyllenhaal says he has a stabbing in Corona. I always have to give out, and it annoys the girlfriend, but I always have to go whoop whoop, just to be stupid. So I like seeing movies that take place wholly where, I live or have ties to or whatever like that. It's kind of cool. You can, pick out sites and things like that. And The Dutchman is about some guy going after the lost Dutchman's gold, which if you aren't aware what that is, I suggest you look it up. Again, going back to not trying to tear these things apart too much, this one was just okay. I felt that they could have focused their energy more on other aspects of the story, but it's still kind of cool to see the lore and stuff like that around the myth of the lost gold mine. So following up with that was The Midnighters, which is a heist movie about an old-timer who did 35 years in jail, and now he's getting out. But his son kind of pulls him back in, his estranged son, into doing one last safe job. And of course, with every heist movie, there's always got to be a little twist at the end. So there's one at this one, but it didn't have quite the emotional impact it could have, or something like that, because they spend a lot of time developing this character and showing these traits that really, it doesn't matter at the end, when they could have spent their time focusing on the father-son aspect of it. So I think that could have been improved there a little bit. So I had a little break for dinner. But after that was The Lost City of Z, which is one of my favorite books. I bought it like 8 years ago when I first moved to Phoenix. And as I was reading it, it wasn't really, it's kind of boring, I guess. But where the big payoff comes on is the very end, where the author kind of discovers that maybe this explorer had discovered something that had been living there or whatever. So that kind of made the whole book come into perspective. So then there was talk of a movie for ever since the book was out, basically, and Brad Pitt was attached for the longest time. And it wasn't until maybe earlier this year when I saw a trailer of it that I realized, holy shit, they actually made a movie. And so when it was here, I was like, hell yeah, I gotta go. Unfortunately, most of the magic from the book is not translated well into the movie. They're taking this nonfiction story and trying to craft a narrative arc around it, and it just didn't really connect for me. And they changed the ending, which is okay, but it doesn't really work for this. I was ultimately let down. I think I'll need to check it out again just to see, but I don't know. I think I'd wait for Redbox on that one if I was you. So I think I had one more movie on Saturday, which was the Happy Hunting. So again, one of the cool parts about Phoenix Film Festival is usually the filmmakers are there. And they're there, I like it because they're not there to hawk their shit. You know what I mean? If you're going to Sundance or South by Southwest or something like that, people are there to sell their movies. And maybe that's what ultimately these people's goals are. But here at this film festival, they're just here to show it. They're here to get it out, build some buzz around it. So, you can interact with these guys a lot through, they have a little party pavilion or the Q&As or even on Twitter, which is how I heard about Happy Hunting. The filmmakers had seen my schedule and they were like, you have room for Happy Hunting. You should check it out. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. But it was right after Lost City. It was a long day at the movies. And I'm falling asleep. I think if this movie wasn't as enjoyable as it was, I would have conked out in the theater there. But thank God for them. It's basically a version of The Most Dangerous Game, basically. Did I say basically twice? Well, now I've said it 3 times. It's not, maybe it was subconsciously a reference, but it's not based on that by any means. But this drifter who is going to Mexico to pick up his estranged daughter, I believe, comes upon this podunk town. It was an old hunting town, supposedly. And in order to hold on to those roots, every year they hold basically a hunting party. And they send people off into the salt flats and they hunt them. And it's pretty gruesome and violent and funny and things like that. So if you have a chance to check that one out, I highly suggest it. On Sunday, I only had a couple. You can only spend so much time in the theater before you start to get sick and tired and things like that. Separate, not sick and tired. But the first one I saw was Brave New Jersey, which is, if you're familiar with Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, you know that it started out, or at least one version of it started out as a radio play. And legend has it that a lot of people thought it was real. Well, this is a movie chronicling a small town in New Jersey that actually did think it was real. This is one of the more better made movies there. It stars Tony Hale, I believe that's his name, from Arrested Development, and Veep as the town mayor. And I'm sitting there as the movie's starting and I'm wondering, or I'm thinking, because it's obviously that this movie is going to rely, because it's a comedy, it's going to focus its comedy strengths on just jokes as opposed to situational things. And I was thinking, like, how is this movie based on a situation going to carry itself? And it did, surprisingly well. So that was a nice change of pace, I guess. And then there was horror shorts, which I think this was the first time I've done a horror short presentation. I normally do like live action or sci-fi, but I was kind of let down with these. And the reason being is there was a lot of comedy horror, which is fine in and of itself, but like when I go into a horror shorts, I expect to see like some freaking horror short films. And there was a lack of that. So that was kind of a letdown, but that's not a knock against these filmmakers. I guess it was just maybe the programming of it or whatever. But the first one was called Time to Eat. It's about this little kid who's just playing with the ball, and the ball goes down in the basement. Of course, it goes down to the basement, and there's a monster down there, but it turns out the kid and his family are monsters too, so he just brings the tentacle to the mom, and they eat it. Right after that one was From Dusk Till Dad, which it reminded me of like a Funny or Die sketch, and it might have been. It was about this kid who's in therapy, and he's talking about his mom's new boyfriend, and he's trying to tell the therapist that the boyfriend is a vampire, and the guy's just not buying it. But then they show the dad, and he's clearly like a vampire. But they slowly bond over their hatred of the therapist and things like that, so that's kind of neat. And then there's Laura Lost, which could be, I always kind of judge a short film based on how I think it could be turned into a feature length, which may or may not be fair to the film. But I also judge it based on its own merits and stuff like that. So this one could be cool on its own as a full-length featured film. And so two friends enter a forest, and it's kind of like a switcheroo right at the beginning there, where you think maybe the one friend's going to kill the other, but they're actually looking for their other friend, and they find this shack, and there's a creepy dude there, and then they sneak in to rescue their friend, but it turns out the creepy dude is actually keeping the chick there for a reason, and that is to protect the rest of the town, and you'll find out real quickly why. And then there was The Catalyst, which, again, I think this one was, it actually is a snippet from a larger story, and it was kind of convoluted, the setup. Like, they posit that paranormal accidents, like, can be caused by people or something like that. The only really cool part of this I thought was they gave it kind of like a ghost vision, like the wolf vision from Wolfen or the heat vision from Predator is kind of cool like that. So I guess I'd never really seen anything like that before, so that was kind of cool. And then there was The Call of Charlie, which is one of the comedy horror shorts, which I actually did enjoy this one. There's a dinner party going on, and there's some unexpected guests, but the dinner party was actually like an offering to this Cthulhu-like character who works in the office, and so it was kind of neat, and it was actually pretty funny. And then there was Black Ring. This one was more, it's not like your typical horror scare you kind of thing. It's more like real life horror, I guess. There's this house in the middle of the woods in another country, and these guys are picking people for a photo shoot, but the photo shoot is actually like a snuff film. So they film that, and then they take pictures of it and things like that, and then they actually put it in an art gallery. And I don't think that is too far from the truth, to be honest with you. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually going on somewhere. And then right after that was Born Again, another horror comedy, which was actually pretty funny. They're trying to summon Satan through this pregnant girl, and they are reading their book upside down. So instead of summoning Satan, they summon Jesus Christ. So that was kind of funny. And then there was Cookie, which I don't understand why people are afraid of clowns, but whatever. This one is a clown monster, so if you hate clowns, you'll hate this one. This kid, the mom's trying to not get her to eat cookies so much, so she buys this clown cookie jar, and then the clown comes alive, but then the girl makes friends with the clown or whatever. And then Beneath the Surface, which was the final entry in Horror Shorts B. Another horror comedy. This couple breaks down on the side of the road, and this church-going couple picks them up, but then you find out that the church-going couple is not all that they seem. And then, of course, the breakdown couple ends up in their yard, buried alive. So there was that one. Monday was an interesting day. I want to say I picked these maybe I got the first one. So Found Footage 3D was first. And if you're on Twitter, or if you're, if you're following the same film Twitter circles that I do, then you've heard of Found Footage. It is a found footage movie, produced by Scott Weinberg. He's a pretty popular Twitter entity, I guess. So I thought, yeah, I'd check this out. That'd be cool. I didn't get to see it in 3D, which is both a blessing and a curse because I fucking hate 3D. But I do like seeing movies that are actually designed and shot with 3D in mind. So that was kind of a bummer in that aspect. But what I really think is found footage is the scream of horror movies. It really is. Or scream of found footage movies, if you will. Excuse me. It's very self-aware of itself. So they're constantly mentioning these cliches and how they need to get over it. It still falls into the same kind of found footage pitfalls. But at the very beginning, it gets you through with it's pretty smart comedy at the beginning. So it doesn't ever feel boring. And then once the scares happen, it's actually pretty scary. So it does have that going, much like Scream does. Now, when I was researching found footage, just to kind of see what people were saying on the Twitter sphere, they were also mentioning this other movie called Tonight She Comes, which, if you listen to the last episode, there was an interview with the director of that movie, Matt Stewart's. So if you haven't checked that out, I recommend you do that. And I went in, I got to the complex before found footage because I was going to eat some dinner. I had Denny's, by the way, which was gross. And I picked up a ticket for Tonight She Comes. And I didn't really know what to expect other than it sounded very generic based on the description. Holy shit, was this movie interesting. It's got this, it's very 80s nostalgic. I would recommend you read my review too. It's on constantlycalibrating.com. Tons of practical effects. It's got this driving score, almost like a John Carpenter movie. And if you've ever seen Beyond the Gates, which again, if you follow in the same Twitter sphere as I do, then you've probably checked out Beyond the Gates based on some other podcast recommendations. And this movie just goes bonkers from there. There's the main character, entity, bad guy person is naked the entire time. She's covered in blood for the whole movie. There's some satanic rituals and people's face getting burned off and all kinds of stuff. So definitely check this one out. It was a good close to the film festival. That is 100% for sure. So I hope you enjoyed my recap of the Phoenix Film Festival 2017. I hope to go back next year. Like I said, it's one of the funnest things that I get to do around here. So thanks for listening. I swear sometime I'll get Godzilla Part 2 out. It's just I'm having some trouble getting the audio, so it'll get here eventually. But until next time, that is a wrap.
Mr. Brown, let's move too close to Mr. Shit. Are you the police?
No, man. We're musicians. I work for Kaiser Soze. I work for Kaiser Soze.
Where's the fucking money, shithead?